You agree with me that the war against Iran to stop them from having a nuclear bomb, take out their ballistic missile systems, take out their top command and control structures and human beings is about as America first as it gets, don't you?
I absolutely do. And I firmly believe that this is not a war against the Iranian people. This was a follow through on Trump's commitment that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And this is a bipartisan issue. The Democrats and the Republicans agreed in Congress that this is an imperative. We cannot allow Iran to have a nuclear warhead. And they, despite all of the attempts at diplomacy, which is a fool's errand, by the way, because diplomacy is not an option with those people, they would not back down. And Trump gave them forewarning. We had to take that out. This was not an attempt at, quote, regime change. This was not an attempt to get freedom for women in Iran. This was not an attempt to get them out from under the thumb of a totalitarian regime. Those things happen to be side effects of what happened, but that was not what this was about. This is as America first as it gets, when you are trying to assure that one of your geopolitical foes is not able to get a nuclear weapon.
Yeah. By no means do I mean this to be patronistic, but I just think it's so great. What group of doctors can have a doctor come on and talk so eloquently about all kinds of political situations? This really is a tribute to the wellness company, Doc. And I mean it. I'm not trying to be patronistic. It's just there's a lot of doctors out there that could not talk about the war in Iran like you just talked about.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. I do pay a lot of attention to these things as well, because I think they are critically important. Unfortunately, you may have seen on Twitter, I took it on the chin for saying that. People saying that this was a war of aggression, one more attempt at colonialism. I mean, that simply is not the case. And not because I am a firm believer in everything my government tells me, it's quite the opposite, Grant, but I've been following this for a long time. And as I said, this has been a bipartisan issue, and I think it should stay that way.
So we've got Iran. Now, by no means am I advocating dropping bombs on China, but I do believe what China is working on is as great a threat, if not maybe even more of an imminent threat to the United States with these bioweapons and this new study, albeit I'm skeptical of the study, but I still want to take notice and be aware of this. And I'll play a clip for you in a moment, but China is working on weapons that could do great damage to the United States, Dr. Victory.
And this, unfortunately, Grant, is not new. This has been going on for decades. Let's start with the fact that all respiratory pandemics have begun in Asia. And this is in part because the Chinese have been engaged in gain-of-function research for decades. They take viruses, bacterium, other pathogens, and they weaponize them. They create them so that they are more resistant to treatment. They're easier to transmit. They are capable of causing more severe disease in humans. They're capable of human-to-human transmission, and on and on. That's what gain-of-function research is, and it's one of the reasons it is so very serious and should not be allowed. In addition, the United States has had a dreadful over-reliance on China for pharmaceuticals for decades. We get the vast majority of our pharmaceuticals or their active ingredients from China, to a lesser extent from India. And that puts China, our greatest geopolitical foe, in a position to do multiple things: contaminate those pharmaceuticals, jack up the prices, refuse to send them to us at all. I mean, there are lots of ways in which they can impact healthcare in the United States. So this most recent study that we're talking about, that's actually linking a COVID virus to one that is capable of not only causing respiratory illness the way the last COVID virus did, but also allows it to cross the blood-brain barrier and cause encephalitis, brain inflammation and infection, resulting in death, at least in these mice. This is highly concerning.
Yeah. Let me play a clip. You mentioned the reliance on China for prescription medications. I did just pitch the emergency medical kit from TWC. This is one of the reasons why you got to have these on hand. Imagine if there was a shortage and we're not getting, very common antibiotics, which you'll have in the kit. Amoxicillin, for example, strep throat, and a whole host of other things. That's why you want to have one of those kits. All right, let me play this clip for you. Where the doctor spells it out what China's doing here. Listen.
Now, today I'll be talking about a study from China where they've identified a coronavirus that has got 100% fatality in mice. Of all the mice that were infected, they all died. Now, this is the paper here. It's a preprint paper. And I must say, I'm a little surprised it's been published because the situation in China is often, shall we say, not always amenable to full peer review. So I'm a little surprised to see this paper. I'm just wondering if someone's going to get told off for publishing it. Now, the death seemed to be caused by late-stage brain infection. So they got infection in the...
All right, I'm going to cut him off there. I'm going to continue playing it. But something interesting, I don't know if... Maybe you can help me with this. I actually believe China has an interest to release that study to say, hey, look at this. You guys better be scared of us. That's why I believe China would release that study, not because it wasn't peer reviewed or was peer reviewed or because somebody got gutsy to release it. I think China that's propaganda right there. They're fully well within what they would want the world to believe, that we hold this virus and be very careful, don't tread on us, Dr. Victory.
Well, that's a reasonable theory, Grant. My rule number one regarding China is don't believe anything they say, followed closely by rule number two, which is don't believe anything they say. You're right. They have a vested interest in causing us to be fearful. They have a vested interest in putting out propaganda. And as I said, they have been the source of many, many previous infectious disease outbreaks. So why this was put out, I don't know. Were they disgruntled scientists who will soon be disappeared by the Chinese Communist Party? Who knows? But the reality is these sorts of studies are going on. This sort of laboratory manipulation is going on. And more concerning to me about this happening in China, Grant, is the involvement of the Chinese Communist Party in our own American institutions. Follow the money in terms of how much money is invested at Stanford, Yale, Harvard, Duke, big academic universities. Who's paying for the funding of those laboratories? In many cases, the monies can be traced back, at least in part, large part, to the CCP. And that means you have all of these Chinese students, Chinese nationals coming over here, studying in our scientific laboratories, doing research with American physicians on our soil. So don't think that these things are only happening in China. They're happening here in the US as well.